Hey everybody, it's FrSky Steve. Welcome back to the O-20 series. This is episode 11. We are covering things like landing gear, retractable landing gear I should say, and we're covering floats, we're covering tail hooks, we're covering reverse thrust, we're covering all sorts of interesting ideas. And I know you guys are getting new planes and they have a lot of new cool things about them, because every time you get them, you somehow message me saying, hey man, I don't see this stuff in my mix. Where's it at, man? And so let's talk about where you would find it. And if you can't find it, what to do about it. So we're going to look at the most commonly asked question: where is the retractable landing gear? Now I know you're looking at this beautiful Grand Tundra, and by the way, I've been wrong about this plane for the last 10 episodes or so. I thought it was a 1.8 meter plane. It's only a 1.7 meter plane. So obviously it shrank overnight, and it's about 57 inches. Still a very big plane, still very big and beautiful and lovely, and it flies great. So let's get into where we would find the landing gear. We'll hit model, go into mixes, we'll hit the big plus icon, and we'll look at all these names. And I'm looking, I do not see the name landing gear anywhere. So what do? What you do is you create a free mix and you put it in the last position. And when you do, let me show you what happens. I'm going to get out of this, and I've already created something called landing gear, and it's a little easier for me, or faster for you to watch this, where I don't have to type stuff. So the first thing I did, this was called free mix. I went in and I hit erase and I created the name landing gear, and then I hit return, and then I gave it a source. I gave it switch D as the source, and then I went in and I gave it a channel all the way at the bottom here, and channel was channel 8. It was a free channel. I put it there. Now I did something kind of crazy with this one, is I added another mix. So let me duplicate how I set that up. Or actually I won't duplicate it. All I do is, let me show you, just click in there, go into edit. I created a curve. So I changed the source from weight to curve, and then inside of there I went to edit and I named something landing gear, and then I made it a 3-point. And what I did was, if you look here, the first two I made -100 and the last one was +100. So what that means is that as you go through this, and let's take a look what switch this is on. Well, I believe that was switch D. So as you go through, you can see that there it is, +100, middle is -100, all the way down is -100, back to the middle is -100, all the way up is +100. Okay, so good, we're doing good with that. And then the other thing I did was, if you go in there, actually mixes, and go back to this again, landing gear. Sorry about the dog, she likes to bark all the time. And okay, what I did was I gave it opportunity. If you long press on this, you can hit negative. So if the landing gear goes down and you don't like that, it's maybe you have to go all the way up on switch D to get the landing gear to go down, and you want it to be all the way down, all you do is hit negative, and then it would be all the way down is landing gear down, and the other two positions are landing gear up. I hope that makes things a little bit easier for you. Okay, now I went into another mix and I created something called lights. I'm going to edit, and then you can always edit these things. I get perturbed at myself from having to have names that are all capitalized. It looks like you're shouting. Okay, so lights, the condition was always on. This was switch C. And what happens, it's the same kind of idea, that when you flip this switch, it goes from +100 to 0 to -100. But sometimes we have some of these light controllers, especially some of these cheap ones, and I love people like, hey, this isn't working, and you flip the switch and it doesn't do anything. What I've discovered is sometimes you have to go in here and you have to change, you add, the way to do this, let me show you, is you go in here and you go to, it's down a little bit lower, add a new action. So that's what I did. I hit that plus button and went in here. Instead of adding it and making it again, let me just show you. I changed it was normally on weight. I didn't use curve, didn't use these other two. I just used slow. And then what it did is I gave slow up and slow down a half second. And sometimes that half second when you're flipping switches makes all the difference in the world. It gives a delay of about a half a second, and the light controller is able to turn things on and off. And I can see that working also for a tailhook. If you're flying through and the tailhook's not retracting, it might be the same situation. Now, the last thing I'm going to do is actually show you a practical example. We're going to go back to the Grand Tundra, and so the landing gear we were talking about is retractable landing gear, which means that when you flip a switch, that when it retracts, it gets hidden inside the plane somewhere, oftentimes in the wing, but wherever that goes to, it's retracted as you fly. This particular plane has a fixed landing gear, which means that it does not get retracted, and it's a little bit less efficient because it does not retract with those big tires on there. This is the type of plane that when you see these things in reality, they do not have retractable landing gear as well. This is the way they come. They are fixed landing gear. However, what it does have is an optional set of floats. And the thing about floats is the people who own floats typically only take them out a few times a year. So they look forward to going out flying at the lake, and then what they'll do is they'll get the night before, they get their floats set up on their landing gear, and what will happen is that the floats are going to slow your plane down. And I know you're going to say, well, that's not a problem. Why don't you simply make a brand new, you just use your trims, and you can trim it as you're flying, right? And then throughout the day, it will fly great. And then I'm like, yeah, that's great, except that maybe you go out to the lake with the floats maybe once or twice a year, and then the other 40, 50, 60 flights on this plane throughout the year are going to be things without floats on. And therefore, you're constantly fighting, trying to retrim the plane. Why don't we just give it something where you give it a certain amount of up elevator, and that should compensate for quite a bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to create, I've already created something. Let me show you. And as opposed to the first page, it's on the second page in the curves. I go to floats and I go to edit. So I created something called floats, and it's 2 points. And this thing is one of the more exciting curves I ever made. It's 0 to 0. And you're like, well, that's not super exciting. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you, to show that it works, we're going to set this up to about 30%. Okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into mixers, hit the plus one. This is how you set for free mix, put it in the last position, and I'm going to rename this. So just hit this, and I am going to give it a whole new rename here. FLOATS, we're floats. Alright, it's not always on. What we're going to do is we're going to use switch position E all the way up. Okay? So I selected that one. No source. But this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify this. Click on it, hold down on it, change weights to curve. And with the curve I'm going to use, the one I've already set up, which is called floats. as you can see, I already have it going up about 30%. And we can get out of here and we can see that, the one thing I forgot to do, it's always good to go back and look on there to see if you forgot anything. And oh yeah, I did forget something. I got to assign it to elevators. So there's no source, but it's floats. The reason there's no source is because it's only active when the switch is in a certain position. It's not always on. If it was always on, it would need a source. So it's on channel 2. And you can see that when switch E is active, this thing lights up, and when it's not active, it's off. So now we're going to go into outputs, and we're going to look at the elevators. And I am going to take the elevator, hit return. I'm going to hit the elevator down, okay? So if I were to hit switch E eventually, there it is right there, it's going to come back up, and you can see right away it has the 30% uplift. That's a lot. I mean, that's an insane amount. So though we proved that it does work, so when it's all the way up, it's working, and then when it's in the other two positions, it's not working, which is great. And that means that you just probably want to use a switch that's out of the way, that you don't use very often, and assign it to that switch. But what would happen is, if you would want a curve that's a little bit more realistic. So we're going to go back to floats, and I'm going to go and edit it, and instead of being 30%, I would take it down to, I don't know, maybe 7%. I would start there. And that seems like an awful lot, because you want to be somewhat conservative. So 5%. So you turn it on 5%, and then as you're out flying around, you ask yourself, are you holding the elevator in order to keep the plane flying? If you are, land the plane, go in there, and maybe the next time around, go in and change that curve to, instead of 5%, maybe take it up to 10. And then see if you're still holding elevator, or maybe that's a little too much elevator and you need to bring it down a little bit. And that's how you use that curve. Well, we have covered a lot today, and I do thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Otherwise, I'll catch you on the next episode.